We are starting now the discussion of our problems, the last set of problems in AIS this semester. We are on IT security and controls, and these problems you might see similar problem to these that I've been giving you on the CPA exam, just so you have an idea of how the level that you need to understand the material for the CPA exam. A lot of these questions, it'll say which is false, and you just simply read and say, well, these are true, so therefore that one is false. So it's a process of elimination. Other times you might find a couple that look good and you choose between the two. This first one, your firm has recently converted its purchasing cycle from a manual to an online system, which is a probable result with this conversion that's going on. And what we see typically happening when you go to an automated system from a manual system is that you have less segregation of duties, and what we see happening here is someone else is checking, which normally would be done by individuals, is now going to be automated. I would say the problem with going to a new automatic system, as was noted in the PowerPoints, is that oftentimes we believe that because this checking is being done internally by the system, then we don't have to have authorizations. We still need authorizations. So that is something to consider there. The second one, which of the following statements most accurately describes the impact that automation has had on controls normally present in a manual system? Well, the answer to this is going to be C, and it's related to what I was just saying up there with the first question, is because the controls are more explicit in a computer-based system, because instead of a human looking at it and checking things, you have to specifically tell the machine what it needs to do. I'm going to tell you D is wrong. It says the quality of documentation, what they're saying is documents, okay, becomes less critical. No, we still need documents. Early in the semester we said documents could take many different forms, but you need to have them. You always have documents. So D is definitely wrong. The responsibility for custody of information assets is more concentrated in users in a computer-based system. No, actually you're going to probably have databases, and probably the database will have database administration. So you're going to say that it's concentrated more in the hands of IT and not the end users. Transaction trails are more extensive in a computer-based system. Well, guess what? You're going to have those transaction trails, also known as audit trails, everywhere. And you have problems actually sometimes, though, because they are not there in computer-based systems, and you always have to maintain them. Innovations in IT increase the importance of risk management because that system is continually subjected to new threats. When you have a manual system, there are threats that come in from the outside. However, when you start talking about risk management in IT, you know there's going to be always some new way to try to get into your system. The first one, the objective of complete security is more attainable. It is never completely attainable. In fact, we keep saying in here reasonable security, reasonable risk. We use the word reasonable a lot today. Closed private systems have proliferated. And there's not that many closed private systems. In fact, we are doing more and more with outside parties. So I wouldn't say that I'd say that's absolutely false. Privacy is a concern for only a few users. Privacy is a concern for all. It's a concern for you if you go shopping in a store or shop with a vendor. So I cannot say that that is a concern for only a few. It's a concern of many. As a result of technological developments facing business and system and CPAs, system boundaries are becoming less distinct. There's a discussion now at the AICPA is whether we should include IT professionals with a designation of CPA. They are not strictly CPAs, but they are IT professionals. And I believe the outcome was to say that while it's important for a CPA to know IT, an IT professional couldn't call themselves a CPA. So what is happening now is that you in accounting need to know more and more about IT. If you're going to have a second major, I may have said this previously, your second major instead of finance should be CIS or in the information technology area. Attacks on computer networks may take many forms. Which of the following uses a computer of innocent parties infected with the Trojan horse programs? I'm going to say this is A, because the rest of this stuff looks like nonsense to me. On to the next ones. Spoofing is one type, it should say type and not time, type of malicious online activity. Spoofing is when you provide a misidentification or misrepresentation in cyberspace. What I'd say about this is once you get something in the mail and it looks like this is valid and you say, oh, I'd like to learn about that. Instead of clicking on that link, go in and actually find the certified, and you'll know that it is the certified proper company address, and go into the company that way if you're interested. Even government agencies are being misrepresented in cyberspace now. So you have to be very careful. What they're trying to do when they do this is they're trying to get you to click on the link, and then it's going to tell you password, and you put your password in, and they're going to say, oh, that person has an account with this company, and that's their sign on, and that's their password, and they're going to use it. So don't click on those links, and for sure you don't want to go in and put in your password into it. And that's misrepresentation in cyberspace. Which of the following is a computer program that appears to be legitimate that then does some bad stuff? And that's that Trojan horse, because the stuff is hidden in the software. Which of the following is inconsistent with key principles of COBIT? So here's what we do. We say, what is COBIT? And with COBIT, B is right because the stakeholder is the focus of what's going on. And then C is what I was calling interfaces and other things that we don't really have a separate AIS. We say AIS is tied to logistics, it's tied to human resources, it's tied to scheduling, it's tied to so much within the organization, right? So the intertwining or the interfacing that happens is important. And the other thing, you should use COBIT even if you have other standards in place, because COBIT should be just a perspective that says there's consistency in your applications of your principles, your ways of doing things. There's a holistic approach. It's okay if you have specific IT related standards that are adopted. COBIT does not conflict with that methodology or that thinking. A client installs sophisticated controls using biometrics. What did that replace? Well, it's probably passwords. Security specialist? No. Virus protection software? No. Reasonableness test, that has to do with inputting of data. So we're not talking about inputting data, we're talking about accessing the system, and that's passwords. Authentication is a process by which the system verifies the identity of that user. 11 is a carryover from our last module. We were talking about a database structure, and we said if it looked at like a tree, you called it hierarchical, and I believe the example was branches and leaves, but actually it's big branch, smaller branch, smaller branch, smaller branch, smaller branch, until you get to leaves. On 12, an employee in the receiving department keyed in a shipment and omitted the purchase order. Wow, what's wrong there? Well, you check for completeness as things are being input. Which of the following is not feasible during real-time processing? This is a carryover from a previous module again. Is not feasible during real time. Real time means online. And if you're doing online, you're processing items as they come into you in the real time. And therefore, they aren't put in a sequence. There's no sequence to it. A sequence would be, an example of that would be if you process purchase order 100, then purchase order 101, then purchase order 102. That's a sequence. 14, to ensure the completeness and update in an online system, separate totals are completed and agrees to the total items accepted for processing. That is run to run, because what they're doing there is they're going to say before the run, what did we have? This is an online system. Before the run, we had this, we put these things in there, and now how many do we have? Well, it should be the total of the stuff that went through, right? It's the thing that's similar to what I'd call a walk forward. Most effective ensuring that files of data uploaded from personal computers to a server are complete and that no additional data has been added. This is the batch processing, and that is batch control totals, unit including control totals. That'd be like the total of the sales is my example, and maybe it's the total of the item number or something. The problem again with this is if you get those totals wrong, then you're not going to know it. The only way you're going to know that you have a problem is the processing doesn't agree with the totals. If the processing doesn't agree with the totals, either you put the totals in wrong or it was processed wrong. So you could have two problems. We're really only interested if it's processed wrong. An online data entry program is used for original entry of vendor invoice. A batch check writing program prepares a check for a vendor not yet in the file. How can you make sure that that's okay? I'm going to say with this that usually when you get to the point of writing a check, you should have determined if you had the right vendor, right? And the vendor's address, and you should have, there should have been some work done before you get to the point of actually writing the check. And when we were talking about it, we were talking about the voucher system. The voucher system can be automated. So if you're using the voucher system and you were doing all of this work, you would make sure that you had all the information for writing out that check prior to actually cutting the check. So I guess we'll go with D, a record lookup of the vendors to make sure that number is valid. Oh, the last three. We have the last three questions. Which of the following represents a lack of internal control in a computer-based system? Design and implementation is performed in accordance with management's authorizations. That's fine. The changes in the applications are authorized and approved. That's fine. The accuracy and the integrity of the processing files are provided for. That's fine. Programmers have access to change programs and data files when an error is detected. Programmers cannot change data. They cannot access data. The only data they ever see is the data that has been probably a duplication of data that's put in a test area. We call that the sandbox. And they use this when they are programming to make sure when they write the program, it says that it's going to take this, it's going to process it this way, that it actually gets processed that way. It is very helpful to use files that look like real files, because then you know that when you get the program done and you use the real files, it's going to work. So they're going to use something that looks like it, but do not have actual data files. This is the same thing as when we were talking about a programmer and an operator doing the same job. No, a programmer is separate. They design and change programs. An operator or a console operator is the one that runs the data, handles the data. So it's a big no-no. A computer operator responsible for particular jobs neither knows where the job has already been run for the day. That computer operator looks at the log, and it is a console log. Okay, so it's a log of everything that's been run. I said you have to keep this log. Yes. And why shouldn't the database, what shouldn't the database administrator do? So what should the database administrator do? They should design the content and organization, protect the database, the software, and monitor and improve the efficiency. They should not be developing the applications to access that database. We have a database administrator, and then we have database managers. And so that's, I think, the key to that one right there.